T1 packed his bag with quick, practiced movements. 3 days on Station Haven 7 had been exactly enough time to finish the trade negotiations. The Thalan ambassador had signed the documents that morning. Everything was done. His ship waited in Dock 12, fueled and ready. In 6 hours he would be home. He sealed his bag and walked toward the door. His quarters had been comfortable enough, but he missed his own bed. He missed his small apartment on Earth. He missed coffee that actually tasted like coffee instead of the recycled station blend that somehow tasted like metal and disappointment at the same time. The door slid open with a soft hiss. T1 stepped into the corridor and headed toward the docking bay. The station was quiet at this hour. Most of the staff were in the central hub, eating dinner or watching the news feeds. His footsteps echoed against the metal walls. He reached the docking bay entrance and pressed his hand against the scanner. The screen flashed red. Access denied. T1 frowned. He pressed his hand against the scanner again. Red again. Access denied. Computer, he said, why is my access denied? Launch clearance has been revoked, the computer's flat voice responded. Revoked by who? Ambassador Velmira of Thalas. T1 stood very still. Velmira, the woman he had spent 3 days negotiating with, the woman who had seemed perfectly satisfied with their agreement, the woman who had smiled and shaken his hand just 4 hours ago. He turned and walked toward the diplomatic wing. His heart beat faster. There had to be a mistake. Maybe she had pressed the wrong button. Maybe the computer had made an error. These things happened. The diplomatic wing was empty, except for 2 guards standing outside Velmira's quarters. They nodded at T1 as he approached. I need to speak with Ambassador Velmira, he said. One guard touched his earpiece. Ambassador, the human diplomat T1 requests an audience. A moment of silence, then the door opened. Velmira stood in the doorway. She looked exactly as she had that morning. Tall and elegant with silver hair that fell past her shoulders. Her skin was pale blue, smooth and unmarked. She could have been 40 years old by human standards, but T1 had read her file. She was over 8,000 years old. T1, she said. Her voice was calm, too calm. Please come in. He followed her inside. Her quarters were larger than his, filled with plants and books and strange instruments he did not recognize. A large window showed the stars outside. Why did you revoke my launch clearance? T1 asked. He tried to keep his voice steady. Velmira sat in a chair by the window. She folded her hands in her lap. Because you cannot leave yet. The negotiations are finished. We signed the agreement. Yes. Then why can't I leave? Because you have not finished what you came here to do. T1 stared at her. What are you talking about? I came here to negotiate a trade agreement. It's done. Both our governments approved it. Velmira looked at him with her strange, ancient eyes. They were the color of deep water. The trade agreement was only part of why you are here. That was the only reason I came here. No, she said simply. Frustration built in T1's chest. Ambassador Velmira, with respect, I have other commitments. I have meetings scheduled. I have work waiting for me. I cannot stay here. You can stay here, she said, and you will. This is illegal. You cannot hold me against my will. I am not holding you against your will. You are free to move anywhere on the station. You simply cannot leave the station yet. That's the same thing. It is not. Her voice remained perfectly calm. It made T1 want to shout. He took a deep breath. Stay professional, he told himself. Ambassador, please explain to me what I still need to do. Give me a clear task and I will complete it. Velmira was quiet for a long moment. She looked out the window at the stars. I cannot explain yet. You cannot explain. No. This is insane. Perhaps. T1 wanted to throw something. He wanted to demand answers, but years of diplomatic training held his temper in check. How long do you intend to keep me here? I do not know yet. Days, weeks. I do not know. He turned toward the door. I will contact my government. They will file a formal complaint. You may try, Velmira said, but I have diplomatic immunity, and Station Haven 7 is neutral territory. Your government has no authority here. T1 stopped. She was right. He knew she was right, his hands clenched into fists. Why are you doing this? He asked quietly. Velmira looked at him again. For just a moment, something flickered in those ancient eyes, something that might have been sadness, or fear, or something else entirely. I will explain when the time is right, she said. For now, please return to your quarters. I will send for you tomorrow. T1 wanted to argue more, but he could see it would be useless. He left without another word. He went straight to the station manager's office. Da-Yoon was a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She listened to his story without interrupting. I'm sorry, she said when he finished, but she's right. She has diplomatic immunity. As long as she's not physically harming you, I cannot override her authority. So I'm just trapped here. Da-Yoon sighed. I'll file a report with the diplomatic council, but these things take time, weeks usually. Weeks. I'm sorry, she said again. She actually looked sorry. I really am. T1 returned to his quarters. He tried to call Earth, but the signal was blocked. Of course it was. Velmira had thought of everything. He sat on his bed and stared at the wall. What did she want? What had he not finished? The trade agreement was done. Every detail had been discussed and approved. There was nothing left. He did not sleep that night. He lay in bed and watched the ceiling and tried to understand what was happening. Outside his window, the stars turned slowly in the black. By morning, he still had no answers, but one thing was clear. Velmira would not let him leave until she got whatever she wanted, and he had no idea what that was. The door chime sounded at exactly 8 in the morning. T1 opened it to find a guard standing outside. Ambassador Velmira requests your presence for breakfast, the guard said. T1 wanted to refuse, but he knew that would accomplish nothing. If he wanted answers, he would have to play along. Fine, he said, lead the way. Velmira's dining room was filled with morning light. Large windows showed the curve of a nearby planet, blue and white with clouds. A table held enough food for 10 people, though only 2 chairs were set. Please sit, Velmira said. She already sat at one end of the table, a cup of something steaming in her hands. T1 sat. He looked at the food but did not take any. Are you going to tell me what this is about? Soon, she said. First, I would like to ask you some questions. Questions about what? About you. T1 frowned. What about me? Velmira set down her cup. She pulled out a small tablet and placed it on the table. Tell me about your morning routine. What? Your morning routine. When you wake up on Earth, what do you do? I don't understand what this has to do with anything. Please. Her voice was still calm, but something in it made T1 answer. I wake up at 6, he said slowly. I shower, I make coffee, I check my messages while I drink it, then I get dressed and go to work. Velmira typed something on her tablet. What does the coffee taste like? What? The coffee, describe how it tastes. T1 stared at her. It tastes like coffee. Be more specific. He let out a breath. This was ridiculous, but fine. If she wanted details, he would give her details. It's bitter, a little sweet because I add sugar, hot. It wakes me up. Velmira typed more. How does it make you feel? Feel? Yes, what emotion does drinking coffee in the morning give you? I don't know, comfortable, I guess. It's part of my routine. It means the day is starting. More typing. Velmira looked at him with those deep water eyes. Tell me about a memory from your childhood. Why? Please. T1 rubbed his face. He was tired. He had not slept. And now this strange, immortal woman wanted to hear about his childhood. What kind of memory? Any memory that feels important to you. He thought for a moment. When I was 8, my grandmother took me to the ocean. It was the first time I had seen it. The water went on forever. She held my hand and we walked along the beach. She told me stories about when she was young. What did you feel? Happy, safe. The sun was warm and the sand was soft and my grandmother was there. Velmira typed for a long time. Her fingers moved quickly across the tablet. When she looked up again, something in her expression had changed. Softened, maybe. Thank you, she said. You may go now. T1 stood up. That's it. You asked me about coffee and childhood memories and now I can go. You can return to your quarters. I will send for you again this evening. But why? This evening, she said firmly. The guard appeared at the door. T1 had no choice but to leave. The day passed slowly. T1 tried to work, but he could not concentrate. He tried to exercise in the station gym, but his mind kept wandering. What was Velmira doing? Why did she care about his coffee routine or his grandmother? The evening summons came at exactly 6. T1 followed the guard back to Velmira's quarters. This time, they sat in a different room, smaller, with comfortable chairs and dim lighting. Tell me about your work, Velmira said. You already know about my work. You negotiated with me for 3 days. I know what you do. I want to know how you feel about it. How I feel about it? Yes. T1 sighed. I like my work. It's challenging, sometimes frustrating, but satisfying when I succeed. Do you remember your first successful negotiation? Yes. Tell me about it. So he did. He told her about the trade agreement with Mars Colony 3, how nervous he had been, how the other diplomat had tried to intimidate him, how he had stood firm and found a solution that satisfied both sides, how proud he had felt afterward. Velmira took notes through the entire story. She asked questions about specific moments. How had his hands felt when he signed the document? What had he eaten to celebrate? Who had he told first? Why do you care about these details? T1 finally asked. I am studying you, Velmira said. Studying me for what? I cannot explain yet. You keep saying that. Because it is true. T1 wanted to yell at her, but he was too tired. How much longer will this take? I do not know. You don't know much, do you? For the first time, Velmira almost smiled. No, I do not. 3 days passed like this. Each morning and evening, Velmira called T1 to her quarters. Each time she asked him questions about his life, his memories, his feelings. She wanted to know everything. What made him laugh? What made him sad? What he dreamed about at night? She took notes on everything. Pages and pages of notes. And between their meetings, T1 saw her reading those notes over and over, like she was trying to memorize them. On the 4th day, T1's patience finally broke. Enough, he said when the guard came to get him. I'm not answering any more questions until she tells me what this is about. The guard looked uncomfortable. Ambassador Velmira insists. I don't care what she insists. I want answers. Velmira must have heard through the guard's communicator. Send him in, her voice said. T1 stormed into her quarters. I'm done playing this game. Tell me what you want or let me go. Velmira sat in her chair by the window. She looked older today somehow, more tired. I am not playing a game. Then what are you doing? Trying to understand. Understand what? How you remember. T1 stopped. What? Velmira looked down at her hands. How you remember things. How you hold on to moments. How you make one day different from another day. I don't understand. I know. She was quiet for a long moment. Tell me about your grandmother again, the one who took you to the ocean. Why? Please. T1 sat down slowly. She died 3 years ago, cancer. I was with her at the end. She asked me if I remembered the beach. I told her I would never forget it. She smiled and said good. She said that memory was hers to give me and mine to keep. His voice broke a little. He had not expected that. The grief still felt fresh sometimes. Velmira was staring at him. Her ancient eyes were wide. Say that again. Say what? All of it about her death, about what she said. So T1 told the story again. Slower this time, every detail he could remember, the hospital room, the machines beeping, his grandmother's hand in his, so light and fragile, her last words, the moment her breathing stopped. When he finished, Velmira's hands were shaking. She gripped the arms of her chair like she needed to hold onto something solid. Are you all right? T1 asked. She shook her head, not answering his question, just shaking her head like she could not believe something. You remember it so clearly. Of course I do. It was 3 years ago. 3 years, she whispered. She looked at him with something like wonder or horror. Only 3 years and you remember everything. Why wouldn't I remember? Velmira stood up suddenly. She walked to the window. Her back was to T1. Her shoulders were tense. Ambassador, he said. Tomorrow, she said quietly. Tomorrow I will explain everything, but tonight I need to think. T1 wanted to demand answers now, but something in her voice stopped him. She sounded lost. This ancient, powerful woman sounded completely lost. He left her standing by the window, staring out at the stars. T1 did not sleep well that night. He kept thinking about Velmira's reaction to his story, the way her hands had shaken, the way she had stared at him like he had done something impossible. The morning summons came earlier than usual. The guard looked tense. The ambassador requests your immediate presence, he said. T1 followed him to Velmira's quarters. She stood by a large screen on the wall. Images flickered across it, places, people, events, but they moved too quickly for T1 to understand what he was seeing. Sit down, Velmira said. She did not look at him. Her eyes stayed on the screen. T1 sat, he waited. Finally, Velmira turned off the screen. She sat across from him. She looked like she had not slept either. My people achieved immortality 200,000 years ago, she said. T1 said nothing. He had read this in her file. The Thalans were one of the oldest living species in the galaxy. They did not age. They did not get sick. They could only die from violence or accidents, and they were very careful to avoid both. When we first became immortal, we thought we had won, Velmira continued. We thought we had conquered death. We thought we had forever to learn, to grow, to experience everything the universe had to offer. She paused. Her hands gripped the arms of her chair. We did not understand what we had lost, she said quietly. Not for thousands of years. By then it was too late. What did you lose? T1 asked. Velmira looked at him. The ability to remember. But you remember things. You remembered the trade negotiations. You remembered my name. I remember facts. I remember information. But I do not remember experiences, not the way you do. T1 frowned. I don't understand. Velmira stood and walked to the window. When you have unlimited time, one day becomes the same as any other day. 1 year becomes the same as 1,000 years, 10,000 years. There is no urgency, no reason to mark time, no reason to hold on to any particular moment because there will always be another moment just like it. She touched the glass with one hand. I have lived for 8,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have visited 1,000 worlds. I have learned 50 languages and studied every branch of science. But I cannot tell you what I did yesterday. Not really. I know the facts. I checked my schedule. I met with you. We negotiated. But I do not remember the feeling of it. I do not remember it the way you remember your grandmother's death. T1 felt something cold settle in his stomach. You forget everything. Not immediately, but yes. Eventually, everything blurs together into one long, endless present. How is that possible? Velmira turned to face him. Our brains were not designed for immortality. Memory requires change. It requires contrast, day and night, youth and age, beginning and ending. When everything is eternal, nothing stands out. Nothing becomes important enough to hold on to. But you take notes, T1 said. I've seen you. You write everything down. Yes, we all do. We write everything down because we know we will forget. I have libraries full of my own journals, millions of pages, but when I read them, they feel like someone else's life. I know intellectually that I did those things, but I do not remember doing them. Not really. She sat down again. She looked very tired. Do you know what that means? She asked. To live for 8,000 years and remember almost none of it. To know that you had children once but not remember their faces. To know that you witnessed important historical events but not remember what they felt like. To know that yesterday you spoke with someone who made you laugh but not remember the sound of your own laughter. T1 could not speak. He tried to imagine it. 8,000 years of life. 8,000 years of experiences. And all of it lost. All of it forgotten. Just an endless gray present with no past to anchor it. It happened slowly, Velmira said. For the first few thousand years we noticed nothing wrong, but gradually we realized we were losing ourselves. We were becoming empty. We still had knowledge. We still had intelligence, but we had lost our stories. We had lost our culture. We had lost the ability to have a history. Why not give up immortality? T1 asked. Velmira laughed. It was a bitter sound. We tried. We researched for centuries, but the biological changes that made us immortal cannot be undone. We are stuck like this. Forever. There has to be a way. There is no way. We have searched. For thousands of years we have searched for a solution. We studied every mortal species we could find. We studied how their brains form memories, how they hold onto moments, how they create meaning from limited time, but we could not replicate it because we cannot recreate mortality. We cannot recreate the pressure of time running out. T1 understood now. That's why you wanted to talk to me. Yes. Velmira looked at him directly. 3 months ago, I received your preliminary reports about the trade negotiations. Most diplomats send dry, factual summaries, but yours were different. You described things. You told stories. You included details that had nothing to do with trade numbers or political alliances. You wrote about the coffee in your hotel on Mars, about the way the gravity felt different, about a conversation you had with a station worker about her daughter's birthday. She leaned forward, and I realized something. You were not just reporting facts. You were creating memories. You were taking moments and making them matter, making them real, making them last. And I thought if I could understand how you do that, maybe I could learn to do it too. Maybe I could learn to remember again. So you brought me here. Yes. And you kept me here. Yes. T1 sat back in his chair. He felt strange, angry at being trapped, but also sad, deeply sad, for this ancient woman who had lived forever and remembered nothing. I don't know if I can help you, he said. You already have, Velmira said. When you told me about your grandmother, when you described her death, I felt something. For just a moment, I felt what you felt. Not just understood it intellectually, actually felt it. And it was the first time in thousands of years that I have felt anything connected to a specific moment. Her eyes were bright, almost shining. Do you understand what that means? For one moment I remembered something the way mortals remember. I held on to a story that mattered, your story, about your grandmother and the ocean and the way she said goodbye. T1's throat felt tight, but it wasn't your memory. No, but it was a start. It was proof that the capacity is still there. Buried, maybe, faded, but not gone. If I could feel your memory that strongly, maybe I could learn to feel my own memories again. How? I do not know. That is what I am trying to understand. How do you decide what to remember? How do you make one day different from another? How do you hold on to moments when you know they will end? T1 thought about this. He had never considered how memory worked. It just happened. He experienced things and remembered them. Simple. But maybe it was not simple. Maybe mortality was the key. Maybe the fact that his time was limited made him pay attention differently, made him value moments because he knew he would not have infinite chances to create new ones. I think, he said slowly, that we remember things because we know we will not have them forever. My grandmother's death matters because I knew she was dying. That day at the beach matters because I was 8 years old and I would never be 8 again. Every moment matters because it only happens once and then it's gone. Velmira was taking notes again. Her hands moved quickly. But you have forever, T1 continued. So nothing is precious, nothing is unique. There's always another day, always another moment, always another chance. So why would any particular moment stand out? Yes, Velmira whispered. Yes, that is exactly it. She looked up at him. We thought immortality was a gift. We thought we had won the greatest prize in the universe. But we were wrong. Mortality is the gift. Endings are the gift. Time running out is what makes anything matter at all. They sat in silence for a long moment. Will you help me? Velmira finally asked. Will you stay a little longer and teach me how to remember? T1 thought about his schedule, his meetings, his work waiting for him at home. All of it seemed less important now. Yes, he said, I'll stay. The work began that afternoon. T1 and Velmira sat across from each other in her quarters. Between them was a small table covered with tablets, notebooks, and recording devices. Tell me how you decide what matters, Velmira said. T1 thought about this. I don't really decide, it just happens. Some things stick and some things don't. But why do some things stick? I guess because they make me feel something. Strong emotions make strong memories. Velmira typed this down. What emotions? Any of them: joy, fear, sadness, anger, love. When I feel something deeply, I remember it. But I feel emotions, Velmira said. I feel calm, I feel curious. I feel satisfaction when I complete a task. Those are mild emotions. I'm talking about big emotions, the kind that change you. Velmira looked confused. Can you give an example? T1 thought. When I was 16, I had a best friend named Hyun Woo. We did everything together. Then his family moved to a colony on Europa. I knew I might never see him again. The day he left, we sat in my room and didn't talk. We just sat there. And I remember every detail of that afternoon. The way the light came through the window, the sound of ships taking off in the distance, the feeling of time running out. Why did that moment stay with you? Because it hurt. Because I was losing something important. Because I knew things would never be the same. Velmira was quiet for a moment. I do not think I have felt something like that in thousands of years. Do you want to feel that way? I do not know, but I want to feel something strong enough to remember. They worked through the afternoon. T1 tried to explain concepts that he had never put into words before. How anticipation made experiences more vivid. How fear sharpened awareness. How love made ordinary moments precious. How loss gave weight to memories. Velmira listened and took notes. She asked questions that showed she understood intellectually but could not grasp emotionally. It was like trying to explain color to someone who had only ever seen black and white. I think I need a deadline, Velmira finally said. A deadline? Yes, you said that time running out makes moments matter, but I have no deadlines. Nothing in my life has to end. So create a deadline, T1 said. How? He thought about this. Give yourself a limited amount of time to complete a task. Make it real. Make it matter. Velmira stood and walked to her window. She stared out at the stars. What task? This one, learning to remember. Give yourself a deadline to complete this project with me. She turned to look at him. How long? How long do you want? I do not know. Time has no meaning to me. That's the problem, T1 said. So let me choose. 7 days. We have 7 days to compile everything I know about memory into something useful. After 7 days, you let me go, and the project ends." 7 days, Velmira repeated. She said it slowly like she was tasting the words. "That is very short." "That's the point. It has to be short enough to feel urgent, long enough to do something meaningful, but short enough that every day counts." Velmira nodded slowly. 7 days, starting tomorrow morning." "Why not now?" "Because I need tonight to prepare, and because starting tomorrow makes the beginning feel real. It marks the moment." T1 smiled. "Now you're thinking like a mortal." That night T1 contacted Da-Yoon. He told her he was staying voluntarily, that Velmira had explained everything, that he wanted to help. Da-Yoon looked relieved. "You had me worried. I thought she might be losing her mind." "Maybe she is," T1 said, "but I think she's trying to save it." The next morning they began their 7-day project. Velmira had set up a timer in her quarters, a large display that counted down. 6 days, 23 hours, 57 minutes. "We should document everything," she said. "Make it official, so it feels important." "Good idea," T1 agreed. They created a structure. Each day would focus on a different aspect of human memory. Day 1 was about emotional connection. Day 2 was about sensory details. Day 3 was about narrative and story. Day 4 was about patterns and repetition. Day 5 was about contrast and change. Day 6 was about loss and endings. Day 7 was for compilation and reflection. T1 had never worked so intensely on anything. He shared every memory technique he knew. How he used photographs to anchor moments. How he told stories to friends to cement experiences. How he wrote in a journal to process feelings. How he revisited places to strengthen memories. Velmira absorbed everything. But more than that, she participated. She did not just take notes. She shared her own attempts to remember. She described moments from her past that she had written about but could not recall. She tried to recreate feelings based on her old journal entries. On day 3, something shifted. They were talking about T1's first kiss. How nervous he had been. How his heart had pounded. How time had seemed to slow down. "I think I remember something like that," Velmira said suddenly. T1 looked up. "What do you mean?" "A kiss from thousands of years ago. I have journal entries about it, about a man I loved. But I never remembered the feeling until now. But listening to you, something clicked. I can almost feel it. The nervousness. The anticipation." Her eyes were wide, excited. "It is faint, like looking at something through fog, but it is there. It is actually there." "That's amazing," T1 said. "Tell me more about your first kiss, every detail." So he did, and as he talked, Velmira closed her eyes. She was not taking notes anymore. She was just listening, just feeling. When he finished, she opened her eyes. Tears ran down her cheeks. "I remember," she whispered. "I remember his name. Bora. I remember his name, and I remember how he smiled, and I remember feeling like my whole body was made of light." She stood up quickly and walked to her desk. She pulled out an old data pad. She scrolled through pages and pages of text. "Here, I wrote about him. I wrote that his name was Bora. I wrote about this exact feeling, but I had forgotten. I had completely forgotten." She looked at T1 with wonder. "You gave it back to me. By sharing your memory, you helped me find my own." From that moment, their work took on new urgency. They were not just creating a theoretical framework anymore. They were recovering Velmira's past, one memory at a time. The timer counted down. 5 days, 4 days, 3 days. T1 found himself watching the countdown too. He felt the pressure of time running out, and he realized that the project mattered more to him now, not just because he wanted to help Velmira, but because the ending made it precious. On day 5, they talked about loss and grief. T1 shared every difficult memory he had, deaths of loved ones, relationships that ended, failures and disappointments. moments when he felt like his world was falling apart. Velmira cried through most of it. "I have lost so much," she said. "I have lived so long that everyone I ever loved is gone. My children, my partners, my friends. Entire civilizations I cared about have risen and fallen, but I did not mourn them properly. I did not hold on to them. I just moved forward into the endless present and forgot." "You can mourn them now," T1 said gently. "Is it too late?" "Memory doesn't have a deadline. You can honor them now by remembering them now." Velmira pulled out her oldest journals. She read them aloud. Stories about her children when they were young. Stories about her first partner. Stories about her home world before it became cold and empty. As she read, memories surfaced. Small ones at first, a laugh, a touch, a shared meal, but they were real, they were hers, and she held on to them. "This is what we were missing," she said. "Not just the ability to remember, but the courage to feel, to let ourselves hurt, to acknowledge endings. We thought avoiding pain would make immortality bearable, but we were wrong. Pain is what makes memories stick. Loss is what makes love matter." The timer showed 1 day remaining. "Tomorrow is our last day," T1 said. "We should spend it organizing everything we've learned." Velmira nodded, but she looked sad. "I do not want it to end." "I know, but that's why it matters. If we had forever, this week would not feel special." "It is special," she said quietly. "This has been the most meaningful week of my entire 8,000 years, because I knew it would end, because every moment counted." They worked through the night, compiling their findings. They created a framework for helping Thalans recover their memories, techniques for creating artificial constraints, ways to mark time, methods for connecting emotions to experiences, strategies for finding contrast in eternal life. It was not perfect, it was not a complete solution, but it was a start. When the sun rose on the 7th day, the timer showed 12 hours remaining. The last day felt different from all the others. T1 woke early and watched the sunrise through his window. He had been on Station Haven 7 for 10 days now. 7 of them had been spent working with Velmira, and now it was ending. He felt strange, sad but also satisfied. He had accomplished something important, something that might help an entire species recover what they had lost. But he would miss this. He would miss working with Velmira. He would miss their conversations. He would miss watching her remember things for the first time in millennia. The door chime sounded. It was still early. The timer showed 8 hours remaining. Velmira stood in the doorway. She looked tired but calm. "I could not sleep," she said. "May I come in?" "Of course." They sat together by the window. Outside, the stars were fading as the station rotated toward the sun. "I have been thinking," Velmira said, "about what happens when you leave. You'll continue the work. You'll share what we've learned with your people." "Yes, but I have also been thinking about something else." She paused. "I will forget you." T1 had known this was coming, but hearing her say it still hurt. "I know." "Not immediately. I will remember this week for a while. Weeks, maybe. Months. But eventually it will fade. I will look back at my notes and know intellectually that we worked together, but I will not remember what it felt like. I will not remember the sound of your voice or the way you explained things or the moment when I first remembered Bora's name." Her hands twisted in her lap. "I will forget you the way I have forgotten everyone else, and that breaks my heart in a way I have not felt in thousands of years, because I do not want to forget. I want to hold on to this, but I know I cannot." T1 did not know what to say. How do you comfort someone who knows they will lose all their memories? "Maybe that's part of the lesson," he finally said. "Knowing you'll forget makes now more precious." "Yes," Velmira said softly. "I understand that now, but understanding and accepting are different things." They sat in silence for a moment. "I could come back," T1 said. "Once a year, I could visit and remind you, tell you the stories again." Velmira looked at him with those ancient eyes. "You would do that?" "If you want me to." She was quiet for a long time, then she shook her head. No. No. No, thank you for offering, but no. She stood and walked to the window. You have your own life to live, your own limited time. You should not spend it maintaining memories for someone who cannot hold on to them. But, and there is another reason. She turned to face him. The whole point of this week was to learn how mortality creates meaning, how endings make moments matter. If you came back every year to remind me, we would be trying to cheat, trying to make something infinite that should be finite, and it would lose its meaning. T1 understood, but it still hurt. This week mattered because it will end, Velmira continued. Because I will forget, because you will move on. The loss is part of what makes it precious. If I could keep it forever, it would eventually become like everything else in my life, blurred and meaningless. So you're choosing to forget me? No, I am choosing to let you go. It is different. She came back and sat beside him. When I forget you, it will not be because you were not important. It will be because my brain cannot hold on to memories anymore. But right now, in this moment, you are the most important person in my 8,000 years of life. Because you taught me how to feel again, how to remember, how to let things matter. Her voice broke, and I will carry that lesson forward even when I forget the teacher. T1 felt tears on his face. He did not try to hide them. Thank you, Velmira said, for staying, for helping, for being patient with me, for sharing your memories and your pain and your humanity. I'm glad I stayed, T1 said. They spent the rest of the morning organizing their final documents. They created clean copies of everything they had compiled: summaries, techniques, personal stories, research frameworks, everything that might help the Thalans recover their ability to remember. I will share this with my people, Velmira said. I will present it to our Council of Elders. I think it will help. It will not fix everything, but it is a beginning. That's all any of us can do, T1 said. Begin. The timer showed 2 hours remaining. They walked together to the docking bay. Velmira had cleared his launch authorization that morning. His ship was fueled and ready. His bag was packed. I wish I could give you something, Velmira said, to thank you properly. You don't need to. But I want to. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip. This is my journal entry from this week. Everything I observed, everything I felt, everything I learned. When I forget, I will still have this record, and maybe someday I will read it and feel an echo of what I feel now. She placed it in his hand. I want you to have a copy too, so you will know that this week mattered, that I remembered it at least for a while, that it changed me. T1 closed his hand around the chip. Thank you. And I want to give you one more thing. She looked at him directly. Permission to forget me too. What? You will go home, you will return to your life, and this week will become a story you tell, a strange thing that happened once, and that is good, that is how it should be. Do not feel guilty about moving forward. Do not feel obligated to hold on to this. Live your life, make new memories, let this week be what it was, important but finished. T1 nodded, he could not speak. They stood together at the airlock. The timer showed 30 minutes remaining. I should go, T1 said, before the deadline. Yes, Velmira smiled. It was the first real smile he had seen from her. We should honor our deadline. She held out her hand. Human style, T1 shook it. Goodbye, T1, she said. I will remember you for as long as I can. Goodbye, Velmira. I hope you find what you're looking for. I already did. You helped me find it. T1 boarded his ship. He sat in the pilot's seat and ran through the pre-flight checks. Through the viewport, he could see Velmira standing in the bay, watching him, memorizing this moment while she still could. The ship lifted off. T1 guided it out of the station and into open space. He set course for Earth. 6 days of travel, 6 days to process everything that had happened. He looked back one more time. The station grew smaller behind him. Somewhere inside, Velmira was returning to her quarters, reading her notes, trying to hold on to memories that would inevitably slip away. But she would not be the same. She had felt something this week. She had remembered. She had learned that endings create meaning, and even when she forgot T1, that lesson would remain. 3 months later, T1 received a message from the Thalan Council. They had reviewed Velmira's report. They were implementing her suggestions as a pilot program, teaching young Thalans about memory techniques, creating artificial constraints and deadlines, encouraging them to mark time and feel emotions deeply. It was working slowly, but it was working. The message included a video. Velmira stood before the council. She looked confident, strong, and she was reading from her notes about a human diplomat who had taught her how to remember. She did not look like she recognized his name, but she spoke about him with respect, with gratitude, like someone describing a stranger who had changed their life. T1 watched the video 3 times. Then he saved it to his personal files, not because he thought he would forget, but because he wanted to remember this moment, this feeling, this bittersweet knowledge that he had helped someone even though she would not remember his help. He thought about sending a message back, about visiting Station Haven 7 again, but then he remembered Velmira's words, "Let this be what it was, important but finished." So he did not send a message. He did not visit. He let her go. He let the memory be what it was, precious because it ended, meaningful because it mattered. 1 year later, T1 received another diplomatic assignment, a negotiation with a species he had never encountered before. He prepared his reports carefully. He included details and stories and observations. He wrote the way Velmira had taught him to notice things, the way mortality had taught him to value moments. And he thought about her sometimes, wondering if she still remembered him, knowing she probably did not, but grateful anyway, because their week together had changed him too. It had taught him to appreciate his finite time, to hold onto moments while he had them, to let endings give meaning to beginnings. He looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, an immortal woman was learning to remember, and even though she had forgotten him, he would never forget her. That was the gift of mortality, the ability to hold onto things, to carry people forward in memory, to honor what was lost by refusing to forget. T1 smiled. He sent his reports. He prepared for his new assignment. He lived his life. And he remembered.